Welcome back, my friends. Welcome back. I trust that you have made full use of your networking opportunity, and you're back with us, and the time has been flying by. We are now approaching our final panel discussion for the morning, and all of our panelists in this discussion would be addressing issues concerning telco cloud solutions. Yes? So we're going to move right along to our very first presenter. We have the CEO of Digicel TT, Mr. Abraham Smith. I understand Abraham has company with him as well. Abraham, welcome to you and your guest.
Thanks very much. Good to join you today.
Welcome. The screen is yours.
Well, thanks very much. Let me share here. Wonderful. First, to the CANTO Board of Directors, the CANTO Secretary General, fellow panelists and other attendees, Digicel is so pleased to be a part of this year's CANTO AGM. It's an important event that brings us together key stakeholders across the ICT and telecom sector, and we've got different reports, developments, and we think about ways to chart our course forward. Recently at Digicel, we launched our new brand strap line, Better Together, and we continue to want to support events like this that bring us all together, because we believe and we know that collaboration is critical, and it's especially critical if we're going to realize the best telecom frameworks, infrastructure, and experiences for our customers, our governments, and our region. While on this point of collaboration, I'm not going to be naive and forget that even though we all share a spirit of wanting to work together, the fact remains that many of us are competitors. However, with a level playing field, proper regulation, and competitors that play honestly and fairly, we know that successful collaboration can be achieved in the interest of our customers. So let's all keep working together to make the sector better. Today, we're talking about numerous things related to cloud services and telcos. And the global pandemic has thrusted the already essential ICT and telecom sector into the category of being critically important. It's important for our region as we work from home, conduct transactions remotely via e-commerce, socialize and enjoy leisure activities digitally, pay bills online and access products and services, monitor our security and facilitate our governance. The world is relying on us, and we have to ensure that we are there for them, meeting their needs with a reliable and robust ICT infrastructure. Let me make sure this is there. If there's any doubt to anybody about how important ICT has become to our way of life, let's look at how we've evolved in less than a year. We went from enjoying sporting events at filled stadiums to consuming them on our devices. CPL went from sold-out cricketing grounds, packed with spectators, to being packed with cardboard cutouts. We went from attending live concerts, and this week would have been a week before Carnival here in Trinidad and Tobago. So last night would have been, Mashal Monday, and today would be Kes Tuesday on the rocks. And now we've been viewing these shows as lives on social media and via apps. We went from buildings filled with employees protected by VPN and sophisticated security protocols to employees taking their work home, using their personal Wi-Fi spread throughout countless communities across the country. The internet cafe became our bedroom, living rooms, kitchens, or anywhere actually. And even the way we've consumed news has changed. We went from purchasing physical newspapers to consuming news online from reliable sites like Loop and others. And even here at CANTO, we went from our physical AGM to virtual meetings and online networking events like this. The reality is that the world now lives on digital. But the question is, where do all of these things, the concerts, news content, business files, movies, games, where do those live? Well, they live in the cloud. At Digicel, we've got some amazing people who specialize in various things. So today I've invited someone who specializes in cloud services to give us all the details. And I know he's no stranger to CANTO, so I'd like to introduce Liam Donnelly, the Chief Revenue Officer at Digicel Group, to dive deeper into our cloud services. Liam.
Thank you very much, Abraham. Good morning, everybody. And once again, it's a pleasure and honor to be part of this and have a robust discussion about what cloud is and what the future is. When we ultimately look at cloud, we always ask the question, what is cloud? And cloud has existed for numerous years across the Caribbean, across governments and institutions. But now, more so than ever, we're being thrust into a whole new world. And this obviously comes with concerns, but it also comes with huge opportunity. When we look at cloud, ultimately it's the ability to access services and information on demand over the internet. This ultimately provides all of us with the ease and affordable access to access applications and resources from anywhere and without the need for internal infrastructure or hardware, keeping our employees and our people who work and provide services for us during a pandemic at a safe distance. When we also look at this, obviously we've been thrust into a new way of working. Our employees and our businesses all need to remote work, and ultimately we need to start planning for the future. The pandemic will stop, it will move away. However, we now have an opportunity to put structures in place for the long term and make it effective for everybody. And cloud is part of that infrastructure and part of the power that will help us provide and move past these challenges going forward. And ultimately, digital transformation has never become more important off the back of the current pandemic. The industries that can benefit from cloud services is endless. This goes from governments all the way to big corporations, all the way down to SME and small SOHO businesses. And ultimately, Digicel is actually one of the biggest consumers of cloud. We couldn't move forward as a digital provider as we have over the last 12 months without utilising and maximising the cloud services available to us across the region. It ultimately brings us huge benefits as a business, but also it allows us to provide and offer these services to all organisations and governments across the Caribbean. When we look at what the trends are and what our customers are telling us and what we're all hearing, we now need more than ever one place or multiple areas to consolidate all our services, because now we're reaching and working at very different remote areas. No longer do we have 400 or 1,000 employees based in one office. Our office has now become 100 micro sites. So for this, we still need to put in infrastructure across cloud for our traditional services such as voice and data and mobile, but also add in a level of security and protection for all our users within that space. This has now become more important than ever. What it also provides us is an opportunity, and what we see with a lot of the governments across the Caribbean currently is a greater move towards smart cities. This will ultimately provide and support all the citizens within each of our countries with the ability to operate during this current situation and in the future get more added benefits. And this has multi-tenanted different versions. So video analytics, understanding how our people are moving around our countries and cities in areas which they shouldn't be moving in. Smart grid, controlling how our utility providers from an electricity perspective and a water perspective are utilising and managing their infrastructure. Also, resource and sensors. So traffic, very simple, putting small devices and small sensors into traffic lights so we can control the flow of traffic and also link that to emergency services so we can prioritise how different agencies support accidents or critical emergencies. And now more than ever, as we see, education and health in a digital world has become hugely important. Digital documentation of health issues. So when people come into a hospital, whether it's through an A&E or through traditional services, we have digital records of that person. Have they been tested for COVID has become more important than ever. And then what type of medication can they receive will shorten how we actually treat with that patient. And from an education standpoint, we're now looking at schools working from thousands of houses across the Caribbean. So being able to provide the infrastructure, the support and the security so our children can learn continuously in a safe space and with the full engagement of their teachers and parents has become even more important. And this move towards digital and towards more cloud services, ultimately for the Caribbean, has a huge FDI attractiveness. We've seen great work in the likes of Barbados and some other islands where they're now offering immigration to their country for a year to work remotely from areas in Europe and North America for big multinationals. This is a huge opportunity that we collectively must start embracing and put the structures in place. What are some of the other benefits of cloud? So ultimately, it's scalable and it can perform. Long gone are the days of physically having to buy servers and put large amounts of equipment into offices or government agencies. Now you can access a lot of that information in real time, at speed, through cloud infrastructure. We can now collaborate and integrate at a greater level. As Abe said at the start, we're now here with hundreds of people remotely joining through a video conference, and there is no end to the possibilities within that space. Also, business continuity. So as governments and as corporations, accessing our data on a continuous basis, having the ability to move that data off island when hurricanes or earthquakes happen, which we know have over the last 10 and 20 years, have shut down certain things. Cloud offers us the opportunity to create robust business continuity plans across all of our islands. And this is something we must build for the future. The big question that's come out more so over the last 12 and 16 months as we move to a more dispersed and spread out business community and government community is, how safe is cloud? You know, when I look at the old legacy of storing a lot of paper in a drawer or keeping something on a USB drive, that is actually more dangerous and puts your business and your government at more risk than actually accessing the cloud. The ability and the tools are there now in place to proactively monitor and avoid cyber attacks across all our agencies. We've seen different instances within governments and within large corporations over the last 12 months. And we're working tirelessly with other corporations and other businesses to try and protect the information that exists, but also protect the people who access that information going forward. Some of the mistakes that some people do make, and we can't shy away from the mistakes, we all make them at different times, but it's believing that breaches are only for big events. That is not true. It's the small events and over a small period of time that actually have the biggest impact and create the biggest leaks within our organizations. And not knowing what has been compromised. As we move into this new world and as we have a more reliance on cloud, we must start putting robust plans in place and continuously stress test our networks and our cloud platforms to make sure we're closing down of where any malicious attacks could come from. And ultimately understanding our liabilities. So the type of data we all have is extremely sensitive at the best of times. So making sure we have the right governance and the right policy in all our governments and all our corporate organizations to make sure the right people and the right type of services are being accessed at the right times. And ultimately it comes down to having a plan. We all must work together as corporations within the community, but as governments and throughout the Caribbean, and that's why we applaud CANTO for continuously bringing us together like this, we must have a strategy of how we manage data in the Caribbean and how we protect our governments and ultimately our people on the street and our people at home. Putting in very simple technologies as in built-in firewalls into your network, encrypting your data, so when it moves across a mobile device or it moves across your network, it is encrypted end-to-end. Consistently updating our security protocols. Security is not something we should put in as a one-time type model. We have to be continuously looking at it a quarterly or half-year type model. And redundancy has become even more important. Cloud offers the opportunity for the likes of Trinidad, Barbados and other countries to store information privately encrypted, insecure, but on other islands so that we always have that data replicated and accessible in real time. And ultimately putting in multi-factor authentication. This sounds very simple, but ultimately it's putting in numerous password checks and numerous checks in place to make sure the person who's accessing that information is accessing it in line with the encryption and the passwords in place. What I would do is just to summarize, I think one of the biggest moves we all call for is more regulation, right? Regulation is not something we should shy away from. We have seen it across Europe with GDPR, and we've seen it in the US with different regulations in place. And this is something that we all need to start driving and embracing with governments and corporates across the whole Caribbean. And ultimately, we should look at this pandemic as an opportunity to build something sustainable for the future, to help protect our citizens in all our countries and empower them to create new jobs, new education, create new analysts and new security professionals who will become leading across our countries. Thank you very much, and I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you for
very
piloting us through the opening salvo on this issue, Telco Cloud Services. Continuing the discourse, we are pleased to have with us the Director, Business to Business Cloud Solutions, C&W Business. Let's welcome Mr. Peter Spratt. Peter, welcome.
Always go on mute before I announce myself. Good morning to you all, and good morning to the CANTO members and fellow panelists. It's good to see another Irishman on the call. Surprised this morning to find that I'm not the only Irishman on the call here today. Very, very welcome. I'm very pleased to be here, and this is a great opportunity to discuss what us telcos do in terms of cloud. I want to thank my Digicel panelists here for giving a great introduction to pretty much every cloud that you've heard of. We've identified in that introduction. So it's a really good basis for what I'm going to speak of now. So when we talk about Telco Cloud, we do talk about it in specific terms. A lot of the clouds out there that you hear about, are obviously very much focused around the public cloud, which is, of course, a very big part of what the cloud business is. But really, the public cloud only really solves one problem. And in this presentation, I'm going to cover some of the areas where localized telco clouds can actually solve a lot more for your organizations and your businesses, as you'll see. So in terms of the telco cloud itself, it is actually a descriptive or predictive or identifiable type of cloud. It's something that has been around for a number of years, but has only more recently become into the forefront. And really that's been based on a technology that's been evolving. The network function virtuality architecture is really what's driving a lot of telcos like ourselves and our colleagues here to really push the cloud closer to our customers because that's where it needs to be. And it's very important that that cloud is actually meeting the expectations of our customers today. It's an evolving thing. The cloud itself does not stay static, it moves around. But one of the things we know is that it really does need to be closer to with the source of the data and the target of the data. So that's something that's evolving actually week by week and month by month. We're actually starting to see an uptick in it because of the dependency on cloud services, because of COVID, because of the distribution of people and organizations more so than ever before. One of the first areas that we will see virtualized in the telco cloud will be those around our true communication networks, our mobile communication networks and our multimedia telecommunication networks. Those are the ones that are going to be virtualized first. And that's great for us because as a telco, we do incur a lot of costs to maintain our equipment. And over the years, our data centers have grown physically, and it's very hard to maintain a lot of that equipment. But so virtualizing in the telco really makes sense. And it really makes sense from different perspectives. One is, we use the latest architecture and the latest software, and it's much easier for us to change and to innovate. But it also means that we can lower our costs. And obviously that's better for all consumers and customers that we deal with. One other factor that's driving the telco cloud and will be for the next few years is 5G. Exactly, it's not something that we consider to be the cloud because obviously we think the 5G today is just something that sits on your phone, but your phone and many other devices will be generating a lot more data. And that data needs to go somewhere and that data needs to be processed. So as we evolve the telco cloud, the virtualization in the data center for our customers, that will be driven by many 5G type technologies and edge compute technologies that are emerging. So what does the telco cloud look like? Well, we try to deal with open standards. So we're not locked into any technology. There's many different vendors out there that you would have heard of, VMware just being one, many different technologies out there. But by tying yourselves into one type of cloud technology does actually limit the options that we can provide to our customers. So we try to go much more open with our standards, follow international standards at best. And so we're not tied into any specific architecture that could really lead us down a path where we can't be more adaptable for our customers. One thing that's very important with the telco cloud is the low latency. If we think about the public cloud, the Googles, the Amazon, what we call the hyperscalers, they don't have low latency. We have to get to them. And obviously that causes a problem. It causes a problem not only from latency, but also from the amount of data that can go there. And as our Digicel friends expressed there, there's a security level there that was to be considered. We don't want to be moving data out of the region, out of the Caribbean, where it doesn't need to move. So again, low latency, high throughputs, and actually security elements are part of the telco cloud that we're talking about. Important is the ratios. Traditionally in an enterprise cloud where you'd have some sort of provider, there may not be a one-to-one ratio. And that's important because at the end of the day, you do not want to be competing with other people for your own traffic or your own access to your own data. And that's really important. So in a telco cloud, and this is very, very similar to what we do in the rest of our infrastructure, we try as best we can to provision one-to-one. So you'll always have the resources that you're paying for available to you. And that's much easier when we have a virtualized environment because obviously we can scale and we can provide those. Extreme reliability. All telcos from day one have been built around reliability. If you go to any of our data centers, anybody on this call that provides any kind of telco services, they will tell you we've invested millions of dollars in making our data centers reliable, resilient, and available. So this is something that needs to translate through to the telco cloud. We need to actually make sure that that reliability carries all the way through, you know, because it is important. And there's many people depending on us, and that would be governments, that would be law enforcement. There's many different agencies that depend on the telco and now the telco cloud. So the reliability has to be there. The other thing about telco cloud is it's not just restricted to one data center. It can be spread amongst many data centers in a region or in a jurisdiction. So that's important to understand that, you know, we do have it located in one location, but it can be spread across. And that's very important from a disaster recovery perspective, that your data is actually managed in data centers that you know. So it's not just going into a public cloud. Your data ends up in China, your data ends up in Europe where, you know, it's very sensitive. So you have to be very careful that you know where your data is. So again, the telco cloud allows us to distribute our clouds across multiple data centers. So without getting into too many of the technical elements to it, it is actually an architecture. It's been defined for a number of years now. And as we start to use this architecture, there's basically 4 different parts to it. And again, I won't go into great detail on this, but I wanted to show to you, it's not just a conceptual thing. It just has standards around it. But one of the most important parts is what I mentioned first, is the virtual network function layer. So this is the software, and this is basically glue that will allow us to use different hardware components. In the second tier, as you see there, the NVI layer, and that allows everything to come together and to be virtualized. So it's presented in a very uniform and structured manner. So we're not dealing with specific technologies that have to be networked together or firewalls between things. This is a much more fluid way to communicate amongst different devices, whether they're physical or virtual. All operators and all telcos deal with some sort of OSS system, which basically allows us to manage, fault manage a lot of our services. Again, using traditional telco technologies, but allowing them now to function in a cloud environment. So our OSS systems have always been developed around voice. Now we're starting to use them for things like virtual cloud, and particularly telco cloud. And the last layer there, which is essentially orchestration. One of the things that's really important about cloud is how things happen. They have to happen in a very structured way and in a very predictable way. So orchestration tools essentially allow us to do that, to do repetitive tasks very quickly, reliably, and consistently. So there's no ambiguity about when you use a resource in the cloud, did something work, did it doesn't. So all of this happens around orchestration. Again, orchestration is not something new, but in the context of a telco cloud, it's very, very important that we do that. This would be an analogy to what we would call provisioning today in a traditional telco environment. So where does this sit in terms of, you know, overall context? So if we look at this diagram here, you'll see that most public or centralized cloud systems deal with, as you would traditionally know, things like hosted applications, SaaS applications, or storage, video, and email. There are traditional applications which the cloud has been built around. But what we're seeing now is a lot more newer technologies coming out, which are very dependent on some very specific telco characteristics. So if we look at IoT, which again, be driven by 5G, and we look at gaming as just 2 examples, they require heavily on low latency. There has to be a very quick path between that data generation and that data compute or that data processing. Healthcare, for example, again, very easy for the telcos to do. We have fast networks. We can access, the hospitals can access those networks directly, and we can process the data. Ones that you probably wouldn't have thought about, although Digicel did mention, is smart city. Things are going to get We're going to have a lot of devices on 5G which are just reporting back status of what's going on. Maybe it's electricity poles. It could be anything. It could be a refrigerator. But we're going to have things that are reporting information back all the time. It may not need to be processed, but that's where we need to get the data to see if it's of interest to be processed, and then relay that back to whoever needs to know. Augmented reality, again, if you can imagine a surgeon doing some sort of operation today, he will then be effectively in a virtual surgery and being able to control devices remotely, and that would absolutely be beneficial from augmented reality, where you can actually feel and see everything that's going on. The other thing that's important that we need to understand is the frequency of transactions and data. A lot of data is moving in and out from the telco cloud, and we need to be able to function, to be able to process that. So these are important elements as we look at this as a type of technology. Again, our public cloud competitors, and I'll call them that, don't have that ability. They don't have the last mile. They don't have fiber systems yet. They don't own parts of the network. Like Digicel and some others here on the call, we own our networks. We are responsible for that last mile. We are responsible for end-to-end SLAs in many cases. And our public cloud partners don't have that. And they don't really have access to it today, and probably will never have it in the future either if we provide the services correctly. So this is just one slide to give you a sense of the latency perspective. And again, not going into the technical side of things, but just give you a sense. So as 5G starts to come online in the next few years, we're going to have a lot of data, and that's going to manifest itself in a massive data sets or data storage. They'll pass through a base station or some sort of intermediary point before they'll hit the telco cloud. And the telco cloud could effectively be a data center, or could actually just be a head end. So a location that's secure, is air conditioned, and has enough compute to process that data as it comes in and return it, hopefully in some format that's being processed. So that may be some sort of artificial intelligence, or it may be just simply storing it somewhere temporarily and for it to be recalled later on. One key factor here about the telco cloud is we are focusing in data sovereignty. Data sovereignty, as you know, is something that's emerging. Not all markets, not all countries require it, but it is becoming more and more of a request. So again, telco cloud solves that problem. Your data doesn't go to Google or Amazon or anywhere else. It stays in country, or at least in the region where the customer or the custodian of the data can actually store it for you. Again, as we look through this, we see that the regional cloud is much further away. The data center core could be in Miami. And again, the public cloud is the furthest away, obviously over 100 milliseconds in some cases to get in and out of a public cloud partner. So again, the telco cloud is a very specific purpose in providing services, particularly in the Caribbean, where we do have a lot of our islands, geographically dispersed, and we do need to get data between those islands. So just the final slide here, I just want to talk about the promises. This is not aspirational, it's happening. It's going to be a little slower than probably most people would like, because not every country and jurisdiction is going to have 5G tomorrow. But as the network speed up and the volume of traffic increases, we will be providing, and everyone will have to provide some sort of telco cloud service. So really the promises on this is it's open. So we as vendors, as telcos, should be able to pick from vendors that we choose. We should be locked into certain technologies or architectures, which today we kind of are. So we should be able to pick those vendors that make sense to us. And obviously that could include cost savings on our side, which we obviously look forward to our customers in terms of what it's going to cost you to access these public cloud or telco cloud services. Flexibility and control. This is something that we do today. We monitor all of our networks very well. And we would have to manage the telco cloud network equally as well and optimize where necessary. Again, something we're used to doing, but obviously in a different way going forward. Scale is very important. If a telco cloud is to be successful, we need to be able to scale it. And there's many different ways that we can scale it. Remember that 1-to-1 ratio? That's our goal. Obviously, that's what we want to be able to provide, but we also need to be able to scale and make it cost effective. And there are technologies out there. Hyperconvergency is one that's very popular right now, where we're able to scale quite quickly and cost effectively. So again, without actually having the ability to actually pull in equipment or buy equipment in and have it shipped in, we have enough equipment that we can actually just go ahead and do it. And we want to be able to innovate. So the thing about the cloud is it's all about innovation. Nothing stays the same on the cloud. Everything changes, whether it's software as a service or it's workload instances. So we need to be able to unlock innovation quickly. And the telco cloud allows us to do that, because we do it at our speed, not the speed of a public cloud provider. And this is very important for customers to know, that we are competing with public cloud, but we're competing on our terms And as you can see from the presentation here, a lot of that resides around us owning parts of the network, us being closest to the customer, and obviously having facilities that are right there and ready to promote this. So with that, I'll end my presentation, and I'm looking forward to questions later on from the rest of the teams.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you so much for adding to the discourse. My friends, those of us with questions, comments, concerns, please feel free anytime during the presentation to add those questions or comments to the chat, and time permitting, we will address some of those questions at the end of the presentations. We have our AGM, and we have developed a very nice, efficient reputation of starting the AGM on time. We hope that today, and we will do all our best to ensure that today is no different. I did tell you we have a number of presenters. We are going on to presenter number 3. He's the Vice President Sales, Fireminds, McGowan. He's standing by. Connor?
Hello, thank you. Thank you for the presentations that have gone before me, and it's a pleasure for my first time speaking at the CANTO conference. I've been an attendee a few times back when we were in normal in person, but it's awesome to be on the virtual event today and to continue the discussion that Cable and Wireless and Digicel put forward. It's another Irishman, so I think it's funny we've 3 in a row. But it was actually when I was preparing the speech and preparing the presentation today, looking at the global perspective that CANTO offers on its Caribbean focus is very, very similar to what Fireminds is doing across the Caribbean region. Fireminds itself might be unknown to some of the attendees here, some of the people watching the presentation. So I wanted just to give a quick overview of who Fireminds are. And many of you will be familiar with ATN International. ATN are renowned in the telecommunications space, and with GTT in Guyana, VIA in USVI, Logic in Grand Cayman, and One Communications in Bermuda. It was about 3 years ago where ATN, or 4 years ago now, where ATN brought Fireminds International into that family. And the reason they did that is to focus on the telecommunications customers, but to offer them new solutions around software development, around complex IT environments, and of course, cloud, which we'll discuss in detail today. Fireminds, in essence, was born in the cloud. It's a newer organization. We're a Microsoft Gold partner, AWS partner, but we also have our own private data center network scattered across the Caribbean. We're also working extensively with Fortinet on SD-WAN, and have indeed gone into other markets such as Trinidad and Jamaica with customers there, from everywhere to SMB to corporate to government. So in terms of evolving what we do, we strive to offer everything as a service. And I think where Fireminds is unique, and where Fireminds has been very aware of the intricacies of working in the region, and particularly working with telecommunications partners, is I think we've a newer offering. It's different to the traditional offering, but we're also very, very aligned to what our telco partners are doing in market. And indeed now we're actually having these discussions with telecommunications partners beyond the markets we're currently serving. So as we break down, as you see here, the telco and the ATNI product set has definitely evolved. And we still offer the core of the product set. That's SIP trunking, that's voice, that's your traditional internet, and that's private data center. Where we're adding the layer on top is digital transformation, business continuity plannings, full help desk. And what we do is we take our international teams, and they're all focused on the Caribbean region. In recent years, as I mentioned, we went into Jamaica, we went into Trinidad, and we have our resources scattered across the Caribbean to make sure that some of what Peter mentioned, some of the public cloud intricacies, that we can make them real and make them available in the Caribbean markets, and in more of a hybrid offering. We've also, we're building out security as a service, which we know is becoming more and more relevant as regulation increases, as compliance increases, and indeed just as the new normal means our networks are more distributed. And indeed the corporate framework, which we used to operate from, or the government framework, which we used to operate from, with large gatherings in one building, calling that our workplace, has now been distributed into a work from home environment. So I think it's the understatement of the year to say COVID-19 is disrupting everything. But I think what it also is doing is driving innovation. We've seen this innovation across government, across education, but across all of our industries. The reason I mentioned government and education, because I think it's something that it's accelerated need for collaboration between departments, perhaps in government. With education, there's a whole new work from home environment that is just, it's on steroids when you look at the education departments, and they try to maintain and try to keep up with their students, try to translate their syllabus into something they can do virtually. And then indeed, as well as managing students, they're managing parents somewhat as well. So the tools they need have suddenly become very complex, and there's a huge need for them to have those tools readily available. I think where we've really added value in working with our telco partners is looking at those government agencies, looking at some of those higher education agencies, looking how they use their connectivity, doing analysis on how they use their bandwidth, analyzing traffic to see what kind of applications they're using. And then indeed having a conversation with our consulting teams, with our IT help desk teams, to actually map the journey on how the customer wants to operate. And that, again, it's evolving all the time. And it's something that's been accelerated due to the pandemic. When we talk about cloud, I think it's overstated sometimes that everyone fully understands what the cloud is. I think Peter and Liam have done an awesome job in terms of explaining the different cloud offerings that are out there. In terms of what we see in Fireminds and working with the AT&I telcos, and indeed telcos beyond the AT&I group, is that there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach for different customers and for different segments. What works for SMB might be very, very different that works for government. And indeed, what we're seeing is the trend across our customer base and the customers we're engaging with is more and more cloud applications are becoming the norm. We're seeing Microsoft, we're seeing Salesforce, we're seeing AWS, we're seeing Zoom, we're seeing all these cloud applications that they were always nice to have before, and people would use them for unified collaboration, but now we're seeing everyone working from them. And I think what we've done really well is to take that journey into the cloud and to map it out for our customers. In terms of how we enable cloud, what we'd say is before we delve into the cloud solution, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, as we've mentioned before. I think where we have, and what we're seeing as a global trend, is cloud growth is unprecedented in terms of what's happened across the year and the superpowers in cloud offerings. But what we're seeing is, although the offerings are getting simple, in terms of when you're at the destination, it's quite a simple offering. It's how to get to the cloud that's becoming the really, really tricky part. I think what we offer is, we've an intense amount of human capital based within the AT&I group around cybersecurity, around IT consulting, around data warehousing, around the ability to make decisions that are based on data. But not only that, the ability to understand what the people's needs are first. A lot of conversations when you start discussing a cloud journey with a customer will start with the IT resource. We'll then get into business decision makers. But I think what's key to really understand, and particularly now during the pandemic, is the end user and how the end user understands how to use these tools. Are these tools right for them? Are these tools secure? Training. I think training is a huge part of anyone who's really trying to adopt cloud. And then always start with the why. I think very often when a traditional sales engagement with a customer, or traditional consulting engagement with a customer, the provider is typically looking to select the solution that works best for them, which often actually results in not a great engagement for the provider either. So what we've tried to implement is a very diagnostic approach. And we see it across other industries. It's standard. You see it across legal, across medicine. No one has a quick discussion about their long-term strategy. No one has a quick discussion about large approvals. So when we're engaging with governments, when we're engaging with education, and when we're engaging with our corporate space, we're understanding their strategic vision. We're putting a digital journey plan together for them. And then I revert back to that previous slide where we'll select the right technology for that customer and the right timing to implement that technology. And the geography of the cloud, I think Peter spoke very well that data residency and the sovereign nature of data residency is still a large compliant for a lot of it's still a large net necessity for a lot of our customers. I think there is certain customers who now, because of their cloud adoption and other facets, again, I mentioned Salesforce, Microsoft 365, I think unknowingly in some cases have already lost control of where their data resides. And I think what we've been able to do is use our private data center network when that data sovereignty is a requirement. But in a lot of cases, we're now seeing that customers are more open to using Microsoft tools, consumption tools, AWS tools, and then using software-defined networking to decide where that data is resident secondary to their production environment. Like with everything, I think the COVID-19 is accelerating all of these decisions. I revert back to making these decisions is really based on human capital. It's based on business decision makers. It's based on policy makers. It's based on legislators. And I think what we've tried to do in our discussion on that is to build that roadmap. Although COVID-19 is accelerating these decisions, I think there's a certain part of digital transformation that's just a timely engagement. There's a certain understanding from customers that they don't actually want to dive straight in. They don't need to accelerate their decisions, but there's some implementations they simply can't do now. And I think it's important to prioritize what you need from your business, what you need in terms of a regulatory perspective, and what you need from where your data resides in terms of how you select the best offering for you. And with that said, we've built out our cloud offering. And there you can see the logos of the telcos we represent, and how we've come up with some innovative solutions based with some of the large superpowers in the cloud space, but also with a private data center network that sits on top of our layer 1 and layer 2 telco networks. It's exactly what it says on the screen here. It's unlocking creativity, building for teamwork. And just some examples of that is we're seeing obviously a huge adoption of something like Microsoft Teams during the pandemic, where Microsoft were very, very clever themselves. They offered free trials right at the start of the pandemic, which gained huge attraction. But the difference I think we've made is to look at the telco offering that sits underneath that's SIP trunking, that's local numbers. And indeed what we've done and worked with some great ideas with like Justin Ned, the CEO and GTT, is to make the LTE data free when using Microsoft Teams or 3CX, our hosted PBX offering. But even more than that is enabling direct dialing within Microsoft Teams. Again, it's a simple cloud solution, but if you look at a lot of government agencies, a lot of large corporate, they're used to having a desk phone on their desk. They're not in their office anymore. Therefore, they need that on their smartphone. And it's those little things that we've enabled that for someone who's suddenly in a work from home environment who can't answer phones at their desk phone, that's huge. It's huge for productivity. It's huge for comfort levels. It's huge for the business itself. So little mappings like that in terms of integrating the telco offering with large cloud offerings has been something that we've made really effective, and it's working in region. Everything we do is focused to how it affects our Caribbean customer base and what's really happening for our Caribbean customer base. And I think it's all speakers today, and it's been a hot topic, is the security element to everything we're doing at the moment, as well as user adoption training, which we know is so crucial. And we're looking at security tools that sit on the endpoint. As we mentioned before, as a managed service provider working exclusively with telcos, it used to be, let's get a managed firewall there. Let's manage the firewall there, and we've done 90% of the job. As we're seeing with those distributed networks now is that's not enough anymore. We need to go further. We need to go to the endpoint. We need to go to training the user. We need to go testing that the user's been trained. And they're the tools that we've invested heavily on because we know they're relevant for the Caribbean market. In terms of how we enable cloud for government, and we've had conversations with multiple government agencies across the region, and this has been where culturally this has been amazing to watch within our organization, because we're seeing that people are acting on passion here. It's not, you see the people who are engaging with our customers, that there's a very real pandemic happening on our doorstep, and there's a huge technological requirement to deal with that pandemic. That comes from securing personal data that comes in for people for vaccinations, for testing, and making sure that data is accurate, making sure, first of all, that data is accessible. And that brings us back to the first conversation is, where are your servers? Where is your cloud? Is it on premise? Are you using a cloud service provider? Are you using a public cloud? and then working with our customer base to look at how we can collect that data for them. And then more importantly than that is data collection is only one part of the decision making. It's quick decision making, and that's been hugely important during the pandemic. And that's why we use tools like Tableau, Power BI, so we can take that data and we can dashboard it, and we can align those dashboards very quickly to the government's decision making, because that decision making at the moment is critical. To summarize in terms of what our offering is as it relates to our cloud services, we offer IT managed services, even if you don't want to fully evolve into the cloud as you currently sit. We offer infrastructure as a service, technology as a service. What that basically means is we will assist you in terms of the cloud solution that works best for you. What that involves is, first of all, we'll look at your security requirements, look at what you need from a compliance point of view. But then in the very same conversation, what we'll do in parallel is have a discussion with you about productivity, about your user set, about the tools your users need, about the applications they need. We will then, of course, have conversations about where the data needs to reside. And then more importantly is, in the event of a disaster, as well as dealing with the pandemic, we know in the region, hurricanes are always a very real and valid threat, to make sure that your data is replicated and your data is ready and your data is able to be restored. And again, that's all focused around orchestration, automation, the ease of tools, but make sure that those tools are aligned to your long-term requirements as it sits around compliance. Some of the compliance around cloud and around IT managed services is still a bit gray, but we know it's going to, we're going to collaborate more and more in that across the region. But what we always do is we document everything we do. When we're doing implementations, when we're building in parallel, we make sure that it's documented. I think you heard Cisco earlier talk about sandboxing and building in parallel. That's something we really do as well. And testing is key to anything we do in terms of offering cloud services. We're a SOC 2 Type 2 certified organization. Basically what that means is we're audited independently by Ernst & Young on an annual basis to ensure that we as a company are following the rules and following the guidelines and everything I've set out there. And then here's some cool innovation tools that we know really encourage cloud adoption, and that's learning platforms. We've invested heavily in a learning platform that when we leave that initial engagement, the implementation engagement, or even the consulting at the start, that we document everything we've advised. We make sure that our experts who've spoken to you have videos, have documents that are stored and accessible to all of your employees. And then indeed, we'll speak to your employees and ensure that your employees are taking those tests and give you reports based on that. And then I think is the secret sauce that sits within Fireminds itself and the AT&I companies is Fireflow. And that this is something that we use our software development team. As I mentioned at the start of the call, a lot of customers, a lot of governments, a lot of people, even consumer, they know what cloud they want to get into. They don't know how to get their databases in there. They don't know how to get their local information from their local laptops in there. And that's where we come in. Not only as a consultative arm, but we have a team of developers who can take some of the applications and some of the tools that you see on the screen here in front of you and make them very real for customers and customize them if they need to be customized. So with that, I'd again thank you for the speakers this morning. Thank you to CANTO for having me on. It's been a real pleasure. And please send any emails to the address here or see me in the lounge later for with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connor. We are perilously close to wrapping up this panel discussion. We have one more contributor, and we're going to move right along to this final contribution coming from the CEO of TSTT. Let's welcome Lisa Agard. Lisa? Lisa, I think you're on mute.
Yep. Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning.
Excellent.
The screen is yours.
So, thank you so very much. Good morning to the, are we still morning? Yes. Good morning to the CANTO board, and good morning to my fellow panelists, particularly those who reside in Trinidad and Tobago. While I am the fourth speaker, I'm, last but which is perhaps not a bad thing. And I am not Irish, because I've followed 3 Irish speakers. So let me jump into my presentation. We've heard a lot from the other panelists on cloud solutions, the importance of innovation generated as a consequence of the pandemic. I would like to think that at TSTT, we have been visionary in terms of the development of cloud solutions. We developed our data center way back in 2010, particularly at that time for our own applications and solutions. And today we have like about 122 applications in our data center for our own purposes. Don't ask me why we have so many applications. But over the years, we have expanded our facility exponentially. And it's not going down. Right, sorry. Right. So we've expanded our facilities in Trinidad exponentially over the years to where we are today, where our principal data center is TIA 942B accredited, and we're rated 3. The highest possible rating for data center is 4. The only reason we are not rated 4 is that requirement means that you should have an alternative supplier of electricity. In Trinidad and Tobago, everyone knows we only have 1 supplier of electricity, but we do have from 2 substations from that electricity provider, which goes into our certification. Now, what does all of that mean? So sometimes people speak to, they have tier 3 certification, but that only relates to design, so that the drawings that you have developed for your data center meet the requirements and the specifications for tier 3 certification, but your operations are not in fact similarly certified. Our accreditation and certification means that our operations as well as our design are certified. So clearly, since we've launched our data center in 2010, we've had 100% uptime. And since we launched our particular cloud solutions, we've had 100% uptime. We are safe and secure in all of the ways that attest to our particular certification. And we think that given our physical location outside of the hurricane belt, that this provides an opportunity, particularly for governments in the Caribbean who have critical data that they could lose in hurricanes, that locating some of their data in Trinidad and Tobago at our data center makes a lot of sense for them in terms of recoverability. And we are well poised to provide such solutions to governments and to entities, in fact, across the Caribbean. And we are doing so as we speak. And I want to, a lot of the presenters have spoken about data sovereignty. That is when we talk to governments across the Caribbean, and we have been engaged in discussions with quite a few of them, the first question typically is, where is my data going to be stored? Who is going to be able to access my data? And they are comfortable given not only the physical and encryption and other security requirements in our data center, they are also satisfied that the regulatory framework in Trinidad and Tobago around data protection is such that they are confident that no one will be able to access their data once it's stored in our cloud here. So exactly what services do we offer? Not theoretically, but actually, because we have customers utilizing all of these services. We offer co-location, and in fact, obviously I am bound by confidentiality and I can't name names, but one of the largest financial institutions in Trinidad and Tobago, one of the big commercial banks, actually has uses our facility for co-location. We offer infrastructure as a service. We do hosted PBX. We do disaster recovery as a service, backup as a service, software as a service. This particular software as a service, eTender, was actually a solution developed in-house by our staff at TSTT. And we developed it because the government was passing procurement legislation, which has taken some time to be promulgated, it must be said. But it was designed specifically in anticipation of that legislation being passed, so that both the private sector and the public sector can access eTender, which gives full security to any tender solutions being offered by any government department or government ministry. And as you know, in many countries in the Caribbean, that is a quite topical issue. So what are some of the top 5 global industries investing in cloud at the moment? And we are seeing it in Trinidad and Tobago based on the customers that we currently have. Obviously, I've spoken about financial institutions. We have one of the biggest retail banks. We have another financial institution utilizing our infrastructure as a service. Professional services, healthcare is of critical importance. I happen to chair the Northwest Regional Health Authority in Trinidad and Tobago, which manages 3 hospitals and 18 health centers. And we are in the process of developing an electronic health information management system. We started off a small pilot project in one of our hospitals. And one of the biggest concerns is, where will patients' data be stored? And who in the system will have access to patient data? Unfortunately, in our healthcare system, as in other parts of the government, a lot of stuff is still manual. There's just way too much paper. And while we have excellent healthcare facilities in terms of hospitals and other robust infrastructure, we're not driving the efficiency of healthcare delivery because we do not have digital systems to support the patient journey and ensure that we deliver excellent clinical care to our patients. So it's a big driver for me personally in my other capacity, but it is something that the government of Trinidad and Tobago as well is looking at replicating throughout the rest of the regional health authorities. Government continues to be a key customer for us. And in fact, one of the areas of expansion of our data center is going to be a very specific government cloud, so that all ministries and other authorities can be connected to that cloud, which obviously has its particular advantages. They're not sharing with anybody else. They're ensured about data integrity, security, encryption capability, resilience, robustness, the ability to retrieve the data instantaneously, the ability for all government departments connected to the government cloud to be able to speak to each other and interact with each other and transact with each other in a seamless and effective way. So we are working very closely with the government on that. And those of you who live in Trinidad, like Abraham and Liam, will know that the government created a Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation. The government has finally seen a light in terms of the absolute necessity to digitalize the operations of the government across many spheres. And at TSTT, not because of our 51% shareholding by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, we think that we are well poised to support them in their digital efforts. And whether that's at an infrastructure layer, an applications layer, the cloud layer, we are well positioned to help them implement digitalization. And we really look forward to seeing more government departments use our cloud solutions to deliver seamless service. And obviously, manufacturing is a huge area as well. Again, our data center is stored across multiple local data centers. In fact, we have a duplicate facility at the south of the island, and we are looking to actually get that facility Tier 3 certified as well in the near future. And we do have the ability to replicate our data to any other VMware node because we are VMware certified. I don't need to spend a lot of time on this. Many of the panelists would have already spoken to the benefits of cloud solutions, the flexibility, scalability, cost savings, unlimited storage, etc. I can tell you from our own experience, when we put our own applications in the cloud, we were able to reduce our operational expenditure by many millions of dollars. So we continue to seek efficiencies in our own operations. And of course, cloud gives you the ability and the flexibility to scale up and down depending on the level of traffic that you are seeing. So this is just some of the certifications that we have in relation to our data center. And I've spoken about some of the benefits of cloud computing. So with that, I look forward to really answering any questions that any of the either fellow panelists will have or any of the participants. We actually have a robust solution. As I said, only one of 9 in the entire Western Hemisphere. We are ready, able, capable of delivering cloud solutions, not just to business, but to governments in Trinidad and Tobago and across the region. And one last point I wish to make, because, it's easy to talk about infrastructure and developing the appropriate infrastructure. We also have the people. In Trinidad and Tobago, one of our staff is the only qualified data center expert in Trinidad and Tobago, which means he sat the exams, he's received the qualifications, he can design, he can build, he can even audit other data centers. And we have at TSTT consulted in the development and design of other data centers in Trinidad and Tobago. So we are particularly proud, not just of the physical facility that we have built, but that we have developed our own local people in Trinidad and Tobago to deliver those services. So look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you so much. This is where we wrap up the presentations. We do have some time to facilitate some of the questions that have come in. And again, if we don't get to any of your questions in the brief time that we have in front of us, please feel free to continue networking, continue the dialogue as we move beyond CANTO Connect 2. So I have the first question. how does an organization start on their journey of moving services to the cloud? It's an open question to any of our presenters. Before I toss that question directly, let me just remind you who they were. We have Abraham and Liam representing Digicel TT, Peter, that's Peter Spratt of C&W Business, our third presenter for the morning, Connor McGowan, Vice President Sales of Fireminds, and rounding off, we had the CEO of TSTT, Lisa Agard. So let's toss our first question to our first presenters, if they're still standing by with us. How does an organization start on their journey of moving services to the cloud?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think the first step is to understand what information they need to put into the cloud, how their business operates. I think the next step is to obviously look at the infrastructure they have in place. And then it's to go and look at what is in the market that suits their business needs. As I said, I think cloud provides all types of businesses, small, large, multinationals, and large governments, a huge opportunity. But I think the first step is to identify what information and what is key to their operation as a business that they need to consolidate into the cloud, and what is best fit for their type of business.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to move the second question. Let me keep it in the order of the presenters as they came. Peter, I hope you're with us. Your question, as cloud evolves beyond the infrastructure as a service, how much demand are the providers seeing for digital transformation, SaaS, and digital government solutions?
So infrastructure as a service, I mean, it really was just the first step. It really was never designed to fix everything. It could, essentially, it was just a matter of moving either physically equipment from one location into a data center and then virtualizing it. So it really had limitations in terms of what it can do. The next level of cloud innovation is really going to be driven by SaaS, software as a service, because at the end of the day, customers, consumers, they're not concerned about the platform it runs on. They're just preferred. They're only really concerned about is what they're actually getting from it. So if you look at our phones today, for a good example, none of us care so much about iOS versions or anything. What we can care about is the application that sits on our phone and how effective or how useful it is to us. So all the time, I think from a provider's perspective, we need to understand what the customer is trying to do. So you know, we can talk to them about saving money. We can talk to them about, you know, speeding things up. We can talk about all those different metrics, but we really need to ask, what is it that's causing you to consider the cloud in the first place? And it may be cost, but it may be something a little bit deeper. And so we need to understand that so we can actually respond with the right tools, or in some cases, applications to solve it. So it is very much a discussion. There's a lot of companies out there that will, and I'll say Amazon is one, AWS, Amazon Web Services, have an app for everything on the cloud. But it's without knowing what you need, you could actually be lost in terms of trying to figure out which app I'm going to use or how am I going to download it. So it always starts with the need. And then from that, providers that, like those on the call here today, we can actually respond much more effectively.
Thank you very much. Connor, I know you're still there with us. Are there services for smaller businesses, the small and the medium-sized businesses? Are there cloud services that could be applicable to their operations? What are the products and services available to them?
Yeah, most definitely. There is, of course. What we find when we're dealing with digital transformation within SMB business, within retail, that often that their requirements are much more complicated because they are a small business, because they have users and employees that wear multiple hats. The owner could be the main finance person, also the person who's doing the cash, also the person that's out there selling. So what we've done as a Microsoft partner, and indeed as a Fortinet partner, is as well as having complex government and complex corporate solutions, we've built SMB bundles based around SOHO internet, based around the lower end of dedicated internet, that include your journey into something like Microsoft 365, which offers you centralized document management. We've also done that with our private data center network, that often in retail or SMBs, customers, they don't need a full disaster recovery solution, but they do need to know that their data is protected and available. And lastly on that, we've looked at security solutions. Indeed, for for SMB customers, often their data storage isn't that high, but the data they have is very important, and it's consumer related data pertaining to personal information and pertaining to credit card information. So we've come up with very affordable security solutions based around our mobile offering and based around the lower end of our connectivity offerings that offer cheap, affordable, but very robust solutions to protect and enable our SMB customers.
Thank you so much. We have one more question, Lisa. I would not leave you out of this discourse at all. Your question: how much uptake is there to a move to cloud services in the Caribbean region?
Sorry, how much opportunity?
How much uptake?
Oh, well, there's considerable interest in moving to specific cloud solutions. As I said, we have been in discussions with quite a few governments across the region, but in particular, we have been in deep discussions with our own government to support their own digitalization efforts. So, and as you know, the layers are complex in terms of digitalization. It's not just cloud services, you know, it's access networks, it's fiber, it's WTTX, it's MPLS, it's all of the basic infrastructure upon which you build certain e-capability. So we have been discussing with the government of Trinidad and Tobago, in particular, e-government services, whether that sits around health, the Ministry of Transportation, the universities, schools, virtual classrooms, etc. There is a huge interest in cloud solutions. Apart from the infrastructure piece and the e-capability piece, for corporates across in Trinidad and Tobago and across the region, they're definitely interested, I think, as Peter mentioned, software as a service, that's important to them, disaster recovery as a service, digital procurement solutions, storage as a service, platform as a service, and of course, hosted voice solutions as a service. So we think that there's huge interest, not just in corporates, but in the government of Trinidad and Tobago in particular, and governments across the region to host various solutions.
Thank you very much, Lisa. We are just about out of time. However, it would be remiss of me if I did not allow the opportunity for each of our presenters to share with those viewing and those logged on how can they get in contact with their respective organizations to have access to some of these services being provided. So again, I'll go in the order. Abraham or Liam, could you tell us how can anyone get in contact with you to check out and possibly subscribe to your cloud services?
Yeah, of course. I think we've put our information on the networking site here for this conference, so you can reach out to me personally if you like, and also if you come to our website, digiceltt.com, and you can see all of our both consumer and corporate offerings and sign up for. You can fill out an expression of interest, and Liam and one of his folks will give you a call.
Thank you very much. Peter Spratt, what about you? Tell us about your organization.
Very simply, yes, indeed. So obviously, we have a lot of brands in the Caribbean, as you know, Flow and Cable and Wireless Networks. But the simplest one for the purposes of today, cwcbusiness.com, that will get you to our main website for a lot of the cloud services we provide, including disaster recovery as a service. So everything's up there. And of course, through the contacts here in this forum, you can reach out to me and contact me directly, no problem, answering any questions offline as necessary.
Thank you very much. Connor, you're up next.
Yeah, of course. Our website, www.fireminds.com. We're big on LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to check out the Fireminds LinkedIn page, and then it's posted in the network information. Given the audience we have today and given the seniority of the audience, if anyone wants to email CANTO to sales@fireminds.com, we'll ensure that you get a senior representative give you a call or email back.
Thank you very much. Lisa, you rounded off the discussion. I think it's only fair that you also have the opportunity.
Thank you so very much. So we can be contacted at our principal website, which is bmobile.co.tt. And of course, we deliver these cloud solutions through our enterprise group. And if you are in Trinidad and Tobago, you can call 800-4SME. Of course, it's not only for SMEs. We offer products and services to large corporate customers as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. My friends, that was our final panel closing off the discussion. Let me acknowledge them one more time. First, we had Abraham Smith. He was joined by Liam Donnelly of Digicel TT. Then they were followed by Peter Spratt of C&W Business. Our third presenter, Connor McGowan, Vice President Sales at Fireminds. And rounding off, we had the CEO of TSTT, Lisa Agard. Thank you so much for your contributions. And this is where we round off the panel discussion. But we now have to get set and make way for our AGM. Just to give you some details, all our members, you would have received an email. Please go back to that message if you have not already done so. The link to access the AGM was sent in that email directly to you. For the non-members who would like to observe the proceedings, you can do so on this very platform. And if by chance, and I say by chance, you are a member who have not received the email, please contact via email urgently alewis@canto.org. That email address again, alewis@canto.org. We are starting at 1 p.m. sharp, and we're asking that all members log in by 12:50. This is where we're going to round it off at Canto Connect 2 as we get set to prepare for the AGM. When we had the opening yesterday, our Secretary General hinted that the next Canto event may in fact be another virtual event. We are looking to remain connected to you. Please don't wait until the next event, which is July 19th to 21st, to stay in contact with us. Some of us may have questions, concerns that we may not have had the opportunity. Stay connected to Canto, visit the website, stay in contact with each other, and let's all advance the industry as a whole. My name is Wendell Etienne. I say thank you so much. Thank you to the Canto engine room, as I call them here in Trinidad and Tobago, keeping us going. Thanks again to the technical team for ensuring that we can, in fact, remain connected to you over the last couple of days. They have done quite a wonderful job making sure that I could stand here with confidence and connect to you at your respective locations. So, my friends, see you at the AGM. Take care, good afternoon, and God bless.